and welcome to my video for my Corrective exercise services. And in this side of my business, I can help you to correct the dysfunctional movement in your body. And the really exciting thing about this is that by correcting this dysfunctional movement, you will eliminate aches and pains, improve your posture and body shape, significantly reduce your risks of injury, shorten your recovery time from any injuries, and even improves exercise and sporting performance. Now, the methods I use can help you to get significant improvements in the way your body moves in a very short space of time, sometimes in a matter of minutes. I can always remember a guy I worked with a couple of years ago now. He was experiencing quite a bit of lower back pain and knee pain, and he'd been seeing a physio, I think it was for a couple of months before, had a bit of ultrasound, wasn't really seeing any significant improvements. And I come in and all we really did was work a little bit at his foot, improve the way his foot was moving and the way his hip was moving on that side where he had the knee pain. And literally there and then, his lower back pain and his knee pain just completely disappeared. And to my knowledge, it never came back. I mean, I continued work with him in other areas of his health, and as I say, to my knowledge, it hasn't come back. So that was one great example of how we can you can get amazing results very quickly with this type of corrective therapy. Well, if we consider for a moment that most aches and pains and injuries tend to occur because of our lack of function somewhere in the body. Now, that lack of function typically arises because of either a breakdown in the communication between the nerves or the nervous system and the muscles. That then leads to a lack of stability and control around that joint. Or there's a restriction in the joint somewhere. And that restriction often comes about because of a lack of flexibility at that joint, or lack of flexibility at the joint or the muscles. There are other reasons too that the restriction can arise, but that's often the main reason. Now, the surprising thing is that where that restriction or lack of function at a joint is seen is rarely where we actually see the aches and pains and the injuries occurring. Usually it's somewhere several joints away, and the reason for this is that the body has to compensate in some way for this lack of function, this lack of movement at another joint, and so the other joint is then asked to perform either extra movement or have to deal with extra forces as a result of this. And then as a consequence, these forces, this movement, it's not designed for, and it gets injured. So what we can actually say here is that more often than not, the site of pain, the site of injury, is rarely where the cause of the problem lies. So this is true whether we're talking about back pain, knee pain, neck pain, shoulder pain, pretty much any pain located anywhere in the body. A lot of people are told they have back pain because they have a weak back, so they spend months, if not years, trying to strengthen up their back without really seeing any improvements. And I've seen this time and again, and you're really wasting your time, because the problem is never the back, it's always somewhere else in the body. And so you're never going to make much progress by trying to address back by strengthening up the back. To give you a couple of good examples of this, I remember working with a lady about a year ago. She had lower back pain. She'd experienced it for several years, I think from a car accident she had, and she'd been seeing an osteopath for quite some time to help manage and relieve some of the pain. And I started working with her, and what we found is there was nothing wrong with her back, but what she did have was quite a bit of restriction at her hips and her feet. So we worked on that, and literally after a few weeks, that pain completely disappeared. Another guy I worked with, a guy called Steve, he's somewhere on my testimonials on the site, I think. He was a golfer. He loved to play golf. It's one thing he really loved to do, but he could never play it as often as he wanted. because he just had this niggling shoulder problem that every time he played he had to let it rest for a while. Now I started working with him, and again we found a lot of restriction at the hips and at the feet, so we worked on that, and once more after a few weeks his shoulder pain started to alleviate, but not only that, not only did his shoulder pain clear up, but he found he was actually able to hit the ball a lot further, a lot more accurately. So he not only did he get to do what he loved more often, he was able to start playing twice a week, I think it was, that he actually got a lot better at the game because he was more accurate, he could hit a lot further. So these are just some of the, some great examples of why the pain is really at the place where the problem is. Unfortunately, most corrective and rehabilitative therapies tend to focus far too much on the site of pain, or they fail to really identify the cause of the pain. And another limitation is they often use exercise modalities that don't really train the nervous system and the muscles in the right way that reflects how you actually use them in everyday life. So you don't really tend to get a great deal of improvements in the way the body moves. Now this is because they're often based on old science or old models of human movement. Now where I differ to most of these corrective and rehabilitative therapies is the method that I use is based upon the latest thinking and science around human movement. And through the movement screenings that I use, I can identify where there are restrictions in certain joints, and then using a mixture of hands-on techniques and corrective exercises, we can actually restore function to those joints in a way, and train those joints in a way that is replicable to how we actually use them in everyday life. So then those muscles, the nervous system, the joints start to function much more effectively, and as a result the function is restored to the joint. And then as a result of that, the body no longer needs to keep compensating, and then the aches and the pains and the injuries all disappear. I find this to be successful in about 80-90% of the time, so that's a pretty high success rate in this area. So to quickly summarise what I've talked about in this video, these methods that I use are extremely fast, extremely effective for resolving aches and pains and injuries. They're great for rehabilitation, great for improving your posture and your body shape, fantastic for improving exercise and sports performance. So if you're interested in these kinds of benefits, then please get in contact with me. Do yourself a favour and take some action today.